To understand the bowspring alignment and the functionality in the bowspring alignment, it's very interesting to look to the anatomy. And today I tell you something about the breathing. So for the breathing, we have to know there's the diaphragma and the rib cage, and the diaphragma is formed like a parachute, an umbrella, or just like a dome shape. Yeah, and when you're breathing in, it's the diaphragma goes down, but the ribs going down to the side and up, so they're widening in the breathing. But the diaphragma still is contracting. And then you have to know there's another layer or another sphere, which I showed you a little bit with this dome shaped stone, which is the pelvis. And the pelvis has a pelvic floor, and the pelvic floor is also dome shaped. And when the breathing comes down, the diaphragma comes down, press down the organs, it pushed down the pelvic floor like a sort of trampoline, which should be, and this is in Bowspring very essential, should be elastic. So it's getting a stretch, but also a tone in the breathing. And the beautiful thing in Bowspring is that we having then an expansion in the waist. So that means diaphragma and ribs. Diaphragma and ribs are widening, going down and widen. Pelvic floor is going, also ribs going up, sorry, and pelvic floor is going down, and then they are separating. And you see here, I extra took a net, and the net is symbolic for how the waist is formed. The waist is formed through a sort of corset. First of all, we have the transversus, which is called abdominal muscle, but it's a waist muscle. Daisy always say is a waist maker. So this wraps around from the thoracolumbial fascia, which is a nice fascia in the back here, which connect even back muscle, latissimus, but also this transversus muscle, which has different layers. So I'm already talking about the network. It's not only the transversus, there are different layers around the muscles, which called fascia, and the fascia are formed like a net. And the moment, what you saw here in the net, the moment the net expands, it gets stronger. And then we maybe understand why just crunching the belly muscle doesn't make sense. More sense making long muscle. And Daisy always say a long muscle is a strong muscle. And it's not only the muscle, but it's also the fascia, which gets stronger and more narrowed in a way when it gets stretched, which gets lost and floppy when there's no engagement. So it's not only about contracting, it is about expanding. And the other thing I try to do with this model is that you see the idea of the spool. The spool in Bowspring is essential for the neck and the waist. And I try the best here with my model that you see the diaphragma, when this widen, the ribs widen, then the middle of the waist, the middle of the spool gets narrowed and taped. And when the pelvic floor also not like some techniques saying only sit bone together, when the sit bones widen, the pelvic floor gets widened, but also elastic, because we have a good tonus there. Then also we have expansion below and above the spool. And let me try again. Yeah. So that at the end it's this, yeah. Widen the ribs, widen the pelvic floor, especially the lower part of the pelvic floor gets wide. The upper part of the ilium bone gets narrowed, and this narrowing of the waist makes this nice shape also, but this length. And then at the end we need to think about a wave. Yeah, so we widening the ribs to the back, to the side, and to the front, and then we lift them. And this same with the hips. They're going back and wide, and in between we have this net, this lengthen, and as more you can widen here and here, as more you can lengthen and taper in the middle of the spine, in the middle of the waist, I mean, yeah, in the middle of the spine maybe too. So this is the idea of the spool, diaphragma, breathing in and widen, pelvic floor, expand and toned. And then also in the exhalation, the diaphragma goes up again, even more long, but what we want to keep is the radiant in the ribcage, the radiant heart, so that the ribs staying wide. So the diaphragma goes down and up, but we're keeping this space in the whole heart area, and we're keeping this length in the hips so that we're having a constant pulsation between these two poles and a constant length in the tissue, in the fascia, and the whole network. Even then at the end, maybe it's nice to add that you see when we even twisting ribs against hips, that we have a sort of squeezing in the web, and that we're getting even a longer, stronger waist. So all these twists against each other engage the waist even more. So I hope you understand what I mean and have fun with that.